Have you ever stood in front of a building and felt like it was whispering stories from hundreds of years ago? Like it was more than stone and glass, more than walls and windows, but instead, a living witness of revolutions, rebirths, and ideas that shaped the world. That's exactly what Renaissance architecture feels like. And in today's video, we're not just exploring history. We're walking through a story of human imagination, one that brought life back into lifeless walls and made cities across Europe bloom with soul again. Now before we dive deep, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we're all about making history, lifestyle, and knowledge feel alive and relatable through storytelling. And trust me, this journey is worth sticking around for. Let's begin, not in the Renaissance, but before it. Back in the Middle Ages, Europe had been through a lot. Wars, plagues, darkness. Buildings were tall and cold. Think Gothic cathedrals with pointed arches and narrow windows. They were designed to intimidate, to humble, to feel distant from the everyday man. Life was hard, and architecture reflected that hardship. But then, something changed. It started quietly, in Italy. Around the early 1400s, in Florence, a new way of thinking was bubbling up. People started looking backward, not in regret, but in inspiration. They rediscovered the beauty of the ancient Greeks and Romans. They started asking, what if buildings didn't just protect us, but also inspired us? What if cities could be beautiful, thoughtful, even poetic? This movement, this rebirth, became what we now call the Renaissance. And at the center of this cultural explosion was architecture. The first real spark, a name you might have heard before, Filippo Brunelleschi. He was a goldsmith by trade, not a trained architect. But he dared to dream bigger than anyone around him. His masterpiece, the dome of the Florence Cathedral, Il Duomo. This wasn't just a dome. It was a challenge no one had solved for hundreds of years. How do you build a dome that wide, that high, with no wooden scaffolding underneath? Brunelleschi cracked the code. He studied Roman ruins, invented custom machinery, and slowly, brick by brick, created something that had never been done in his time. His dome didn't just change Florence. It changed architecture forever. It was symmetrical, harmonious, human, not just because it was mathematically perfect, but because it made people feel awe, the kind of awe that opens the heart, not just humbles the spirit. That's what Renaissance architecture did. It humanized buildings. It said, you matter. Beauty matters. Thought matters. And then, it spread. Rome, Venice, Milan. Soon, the Renaissance style became a language spoken by stone and marble across Europe. Now, let's pause for a second. Have you ever noticed how some buildings feel like music? Like a rhythm of windows and columns that just flows? That's no accident. Renaissance architects believed that buildings should have proportions, much like music has harmony. They used math to guide their designs, but they weren't just obsessed with numbers. They believed math was spiritual. That symmetry brought people closer to something divine. Leon Battista Alberti was one of those thinkers. He once said, a house is like a small city, and a city is like a large house. Let that sink in. In the Renaissance, architecture wasn't just about shelter or status. It was about crafting spaces that reflected the soul of the people. They designed courtyards for families to gather, arched loggias for neighbors to talk, domes for minds to expand under, windows for light, not just to see, but to feel alive. From the grand palaces of Venice to the quiet chapels in the hills of Tuscany, every line, every column had meaning. Let's not forget Michelangelo. Yes, he sculpted David. But he also shaped architecture. The design of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. That was Michelangelo's vision, blending divine proportions with deeply human emotion. He said architecture was a form of poetry. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Now as we keep exploring, remember this. The Renaissance wasn't just a style. It was a statement, a belief that we could build better lives by building more thoughtful spaces. That's lifestyle at its core, right? Making choices about the way we live, create, and even walk through our cities. So when you see those grand Renaissance columns, or perfect domes, or facades that feel like a painter's canvas, you're not just looking at architecture. You're looking at a philosophy. A moment in time where humans dared to dream again. And that's why it matters today. Because now more than ever, we're surrounded by buildings, but how many of them make us feel? The Renaissance reminds us that we deserve to live in beauty, to build with thought, to surround ourselves with meaning. So next time you walk by a building that makes you pause, think of Brunelleschi, Michelangelo, Alberti. Think of how a single dome sparked a revolution of imagination. And if you've found this story as fascinating as I have, you know what to do. Subscribe, because this channel isn't just about history. It's about how ideas from the past can still inspire the way we live today. We'll be exploring more stories, more beauty, more human connection, all through the lens of lifestyle, architecture, and storytelling. And trust me, this is just the beginning. So stick around. There's so much more to uncover.